What's happening? This is Corin Nemec, and you're listening to the FSF PopCast.
The show that tried to go through the Stargate, but somehow didn't hit the Iris. Yeah, we got lucky.
Our show is brought to you by our charity sponsor, the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund, which supports the Wish Upon a Teen Foundation that helps out sick kids when they need it most. And just imagine the comfort you'll give Red Shirt crewman number 140. You'll know that when he puts on the red shirt and joins SG-1 in their search for the lost city, that he didn't leave his family destitute and without hope, because the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund has his back, and what's left of his dog tags.
All right, guys, our guest today is an actor that you know from his time on Parker Lewis Can't Lose, Stargate SG-1, Star Trek Renegades, Supernatural, and trust me, you will lose your breath trying to say all of them. He has a action-packed, jam-full IMDb resume, and we're so very happy and proud to welcome Corin Nemec to the FSF PopCast today. Welcome to the show, Corin.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. We've been wanting to get you on the show for a little bit, so we're excited that you said yes. And all of a sudden, we started talking about all the things we could talk about. What can we talk about with Corin? Well, we can talk about this. We can talk about that. So all these things started coming together. But what has become our standard on this show is because, admittedly, we're nerds, and we fly our nerd flag pretty proudly. We love a good origin story. So we like to talk to the people that are our guests because you're the hero of this story. So we want to know the origin story of our heroes.
Okay.
So in the story of Corin Nemec, what were the influences in your young life that encouraged you to reach out to a career in the entertainment industry?
I would say that having both my parents be artists was certainly one of them. Although I was raised primarily with my mother, she was a graphic designer in the music business. Well, early on, she was a graphic designer for like Home Depot and some other stuff like that. But then segued into the music business and was a graphic designer for Standing Room Only, a huge promotional company in Atlanta, Georgia, during the late 70s, early 80s. And she did all the poster design for the bands that they were promoting. So all the band posters, basically.
Okay.
It was a very cool gig. And then went on to work for the Nederlanders at the Fox Theater in Atlanta, and transferred out to the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles and Hollywood in the graphic design department there. Went on to work with Capitol Records as well after that. But long story short, that's how I ended up in Los Angeles. But that being said, being around all the rock concerts and the plays and the musicals, and being able to go backstage and meet the players, and that element of it, having a behind the scenes kind of view of what's going on that people really who are just watching or viewing never get to see, and it's not meant to see. It's not meant to see any of the chaos behind the scenes or what's going on in the makeup room or any of the other stuff. You're just
Sure.
supposed to see the finished product. So the excitement of what's always going on behind the scenes in order to keep everything on stage in perfect timing, that was always interesting to me as well. And then my father is a production designer in the film business. He was an assistant art director on Goonies. He was a set designer on the series V way back in the day.
Oh,
one
cool.
of his first jobs. He was actually a trained architect. He studied at the University of Arkansas and was in an architectural firm designing buildings and stuff before he got into the film business. He was kind of roped into the film business because he was able to do professional drafting. A lot of production designers, people in the industry, not a lot, but some of them don't have they don't come from a classically trained background. But that said, he really rose to the top very quickly, ended up being the production designer on Patriot Games, Terminator 2, Twister, The Saint, Shadow, The Abyss, Ironclad later on. I can't even, his IMDb is as long as mine. So is my sister. My sister is a first AD in the film business now and works all the time. She's fantastic at her job. But growing up in the business like that, like I said, when I would go fly from Atlanta to Los Angeles to visit my father and check out whatever set he's working on or all of that. Again, it was being able to see what's goes on behind the set. I remember being on the sets of V and walking around and seeing how from the outside you see this really rough hewn structure with just boards pegged everywhere, and it's kind of a mess. I mean, it's artistically done and it's sound in its construction, but it's not meant to be pretty, you know.
Right.
But and then suddenly they have these false doors that open up, and you walk out from that world of the fake and roughly built inside of a soundstage, and suddenly when those doors close, you're in a perfectly designed spaceship set, as real as it potentially could be, depending on what it's like to be on a real spaceship. I don't fucking know, but I don't freaking know. So that said, it would always inspired me, the fact that here, whether you were a kid or not, it was really the movie Goonies that my dad was assistant art director on. That was the movie that kind of was the impetus to me wanting to become an actor and wanting to get to go on that kind of journey that the characters in that went on, knowing full well that it was all contrived and designed and rehearsed, and the wardrobe was there, all of that. But that's what made it even more exciting to me, because part of growing up where I did as a kid, me and my friends were into Dungeons and Dragons, and we had there was a huge swath of woods that was out and back of some of the areas I lived in, and we'd be out back, having sword fights with sticks, and then that stick would suddenly turn into a machine gun for some Vietnam
Sure.
decided to get into, and then whatever it was, like anything around us was our props and our environment, and I realized that if I became an actor, especially at a young age, that I'd have the opportunity to get full wardrobe, to get real props as you could get, to have real environments to go on this journey, this fictional journey in or on. And then at the end of the day, what really blew my mind when I was about 11 years old, when I was watching Goonies, and when I really thought about it, was that someone was going to film that whole fictional reality of mine. So let's say I was out in the woods playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, with my buddies, and then suddenly, but we had full wardrobe, and then somebody was full special effects, and then somebody was going to film that, and then I could go home at the end of the day, and me and my buddies could sit back on the couch and watch it. Like that was like mind blowing to me. So the idea that I could live these realities outside of the real one that I lived in, and exist as these characters that weren't myself, and somebody else would film and record those, edit them together, and I could go sit in a theater or watch it on television and see myself living a life that wasn't my own. It was just far out.
That's a really cool thought. I honestly, and I think it's probably the most unique answer that we've gotten to that question, to be honest with you, because I don't think that anybody else has mentioned the fact that, that they, or if they have, I don't recall it, that they've had that type of immersion rather into the arts and entertainment industry coming up, and that they got to see this, and that's how it affected their mindset and what they were thinking of and how they were going about it. So for me, that's kind of a cool thought, because instantly, as soon as you said that I was out in the woods playing with my buddies and sticks.
Yeah, you harken back to your days of.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, because we grew up in the country, and we were always out in the woods playing something.
Building a fort, doing something, whatever.
I mean, we were building forts.
Some entrails from some poor animal that was mauled by a coyote. Good times.
That has happened. We had crabapple fights. We were flinging deer poop at each other
because they hurt.
Oh yeah. All these different things. And all of a sudden I'm thinking about that, going, how cool would that have been to be able to go back and see those moments recorded, edited, and with all these special effects and everything.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, no, that is a really, really cool thought.
Yeah, fireball.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, because And at that age, I think what was so inspiring about it was because I was so young. I was young enough at 11 years old that I didn't have any preconceived ideas. Also, both my parents being in the arts and entertainment business, neither one of them were pushing myself or my sister to get into that. They're my, especially my our mom. Our mom's vision for us was whatever makes you guys happy, that makes you successful in life, that you love to do, that you're good at, that you enjoy. You know, it didn't matter
Right on.
if we wanted to become a veterinarian or a bricklayer or whatever the case may be. She would have supported it to the, you know, all the way to the end. But And so when I did mention that I wanted to get into acting, I had a lot of support from the family as well. They didn't go, "Oh, acting? What are you going to do with that later on in life?" You know. Uh, but I had, oddly enough, speaking of that, when in my theater class that I was in for many years, of my teacher Manu Tupo, American Repertory Company, I studied there, gosh, from my early 20s to my late 30s, before he passed away. But he actually had a number of lawyers that were studying for trial to become trial lawyers that would come through and study acting there in order to, you know, to get their chops to be able to be in front of a judge and a jury and stuff. I found that pretty interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
Never would
we
have
all
thought of that
know
being a thing.
it's all a charade.
For sure. Well, that's cool, man.
So you have your fingers in a couple different roles that have taken behind set as well as on set. So you've been a writer, you've also been a producer, and you've also been an actor. Um, there might be some other things, but I didn't notice any other on IMDb, and that may not be accurate. Uh, so
A little
which
directing, but mostly acting, and then producing and then writing. You know, I'd say, you know, in terms of how much I've done it, but I'm trying to get more into the writing producing. That's the Well, I am getting more into the writing producing, I should say, because it has, you know, there has been more projects of late that are
Mhm,
going along those lines, and also just the acting ones. I got some great projects coming out as well,
yeah.
Cool.
coming up soon.
And that kind of answered my question is which one do you prefer more? Like, do you prefer the writing or the acting or
Well, for different reasons, I have to say. I mean, writing is my favorite, to be honest. If I could just, you know, make the kind of money that I'd like to make, and do nothing except write, and obviously I'd love to work as a creative producer on those and make sure that, you know, that they don't get too watered down by the time they make it to screen. So that's why I like the writing producing side, because there is an element of some creative control you can still maintain over your product. Whereas if it's just, I mean, I've written a number of scripts that I never even end up getting credit for when they came out, including
Mhm.
Fire Twister, that movie Fire Twister. I wrote the original script for, and several Lifetime movies as well, that they just never gave me my credit for. It's very strange. Don't understand why, but whatever. But that said, you know, you know, maintaining that creative control, I think is also important. But the thing I like about the writing is that it's there's this. I don't want to get into some kind of theological analogy for this, but in a sense, you become this sort of like quasi god over your universe that you're creating, and
Right.
Sure.
it's a one-dimensional universe with four-dimensional properties. When you read it, it comes to life in the mind and takes on all of the dimensions that it loses on the page. uh, but but within the context of that, I can create the entire beginning, middle, and end of a character's journey, and put them through whatever types of ups and downs that I want to see them go through, which to me is just it's a wild experience. And I love storytelling. I love problem solving with screenplays. I love trying to figure out. Uh, for instance, when I write my screenplays, I don't like to introduce anything that doesn't have some type of resolution to it, even if it's a prop, I don't I like to keep I like to be able to have everything by the time somebody either finishes reading one of my scripts, there's not one element of that script that they should have any confusions over, including, like I said, props that are introduced. If I'm going to introduce something to a scene, why not make there's an opportunity for some significance there,
Sure.
and also to make sense out of it in the end. So it's like, let's say I introduce a lady who likes to fry eggs, and she's cooking, and the movie's a thriller, and it used to be her grandmother's frying pan and stuff, and this thing goes throughout the whole movie, and it ends up being the exact frying pan that saves her from being murdered by the bad guy. You know what I mean? It'd be
Yeah.
something like that, where you're like, oh, thank God for grandma's frying pan. Or whatever. So I do enjoy the writing side of it the most, but I've been acting for so long. It's really kind of more of a second nature. I feel very at home and comfortable, probably more comfortable in life when I'm on set than when I'm off set.
Hmm.
Fair
So
enough.
having the acting background and then kind of transitioning into the writing, do you kind of, as you're writing, kind of see it through an actor's eyes and just kind of be like, okay, this is how I can write it so that any actor would be able to pick it up? Like you were saying, it's really, you try to write it so that it's real easy to understand.
Yeah, I think for me, obviously, the very first screenplay I ever wrote was called Future Boy's Misadventures Through Consciousness when I was 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just such like a barf of a story onto a page. It had some semblance of a beginning, middle, and end to it that you could make sense of. But even though I've been an actor from age 12 years old all the way up to 18, I had never written a script, and it's very easy to get caught up in sort of that novel style of writing when it comes to screenplays and overwriting everything. And so I went and took a UCLA extension course on how to write a screenplay, and then went and did like a writer's boot camp in Hollywood with professional seasoned writers, where by the end of the boot camp you've written a short film,
Mm-hmm.
and these kind of things. So, and then right around that same time, I started studying with Manu Tupo at the American Repertory Company in my early 20s, and he really promoted uh, writing scripts, directing your own scenes and plays, getting together with other students, coming up with something. Let me direct this scene with you guys in it, this, that, and really trying to get the actors in his theater company to think outside the box and not end up being one trick ponies. Because his point is you came here to Hollywood to be a star, but you never know when you might end up a very successful producer, or a
Mm-hmm.
really successful writer, or a fantastic director. Or you don't, if you pigeonhole yourself to one dream, to one final outcome, you may achieve that, but your the outcome of that, in proportion to spreading yourself across the board with many other areas of interest and talent, you have a better shot at success in the long run, or at least being able to maintain a career in your industry of choice, and not having to completely abandon that industry and go into something totally different, car sales.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're like, I want to be an artist. I want to be in the arts and entertainment industry. I've studied acting for 25 years and I can't get a job. Well, yeah, because all you did was study acting for 25 years.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you branch out? Start writing your own plays, start directing your own plays, start writing, producing, and directing your own plays if you're in the theater world, even if it's on a small scale. Scale up from there. Produce a short film, this, that. I know most people say, what's the point of producing short films? The point of producing them is to prove that you can do it, and to see and to test your talents on a smaller scale, to see if you can pull off what you believe you can on a larger scale. And if you can't pull it off exactly the way you expect on a smaller scale, on a kind of do-it-yourself budget, then at least you didn't blow huge amounts of money, waste huge amounts of time, and have a bunch of people to pay back that you're never going to be able to,
Right.
Sure.
So, and nowadays with all of the platforming and everything else, I think short films have a little bit more of a shelf life, and can find better homes. And I think that if you go into shooting a short film with the idea of having a full-length feature in mind, and or a backdoor pilot for a TV series or something like that, if you're going to do a short film, don't just do it just because it's a short film, and just because you're inspired to do a short film, well, think, well, what would I be able to do with this outside of it just being a short film, and then decide,
Right.
is the idea that inspired, or could you come up with something better, or could you develop that idea out even further into something that could, that you could actually use this as a vehicle to raise more capital to produce independently, or to sell to a production company or studio that would like to make it.
And to your point, a few weeks back, we interviewed a gentleman by the name of Brett Smith, who's an indie filmmaker, and he's done just that. He made these short films as a proving ground of sorts, and he took these short films and turned them into feature films,
Yeah.
and that's what he's been doing. So here's his proving ground. This is the the thesis that he's working with, and that gave investors and everybody something to see, and what he was working towards. And now he's able to take that short film and make it a feature film, and he's going to doing that with a couple of other of his short films as well.
Yeah, very
So it's
smart.
yeah, it's a very cool idea, and I think that's a very smart way to go about it, for all the reasons that you just mentioned. Exactly.
Mhm.
So very cool. All right, Corin. Now you've been acting for a while before you landed the role, and we have to talk a little bit about Parker Lewis Can't Lose, because
Sure.
it's Parker Lewis Can't Lose. Now that came out in 1990. I was a freshman in high school, and
Perfect timing for you.
it was perfect for me. Exactly. And but you've been acting for a while before you got that show. Now this show was only around for about 70 some odd episodes. I think it was
78.
about 78. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, a little bit
10
a little more
episodes short of wide,
distribution, right?
not distribution, but for the reruns.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was 10 episodes short of what the standard is for purchasing, series for reruns. And so
Ah, gotcha.
Interesting.
the only network that picked it up in the US after it ran its course on Fox was USA Network, and they ran it back to back. The whole 3 seasons, just burned through them, and then it's been shelved in the US ever since, until it came out on Crackle, which only showed the first 2 seasons wisely, because the third season is kind of a dud when they changed the format of the show.
Right.
But I got that. I got the part because of a TV special I did a couple of years before, called "What's Alan Watching" for CBS,
Mm-hmm.
that Bob Tischler wrote, and that Barbara Barry was in it. Fran Drescher played my older sister. Peter Michael Getz was in it. Obviously, Eddie Murphy was in it, and
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Schlamme directed it. And I got the lead role in that. I had to fight very hard to get that lead role too. I mean, I must have gone to at least, I know I tested 2 or 3 times for it. They kept, I don't know who was it that was fighting for me behind the scenes, but somebody was. But they kept bringing in other people. I even tested against Sean Astin, which I thought for sure when they brought him in, I was going to lose the part. And I ended up getting it. And I love Sean; he's a great guy. We used to compete for roles quite a bit when we were young. But that said, I got that part, and it was a very quirky, awkward, strange comedy about a
Mm-hmm.
kid who was miserable with his home life, and would talk to the camera, break the fourth wall, tell the audience what's going on in his life, and then he could also, on the TV, when you would watch that, there would be like little segments on the television that were like kind of vignettes that you would see on Saturday Night Live, except shot,
Right.
like they had Gandhi on Ice. It was like a, where Gandhi's traveling across the world doing an ice capade show to raise awareness, for peace and all of this stuff. And the James Brown TV musical where, it's James Brown in prison and all this stuff. And Eddie Murphy plays James Brown in that. But needless to say, it was very funny. It was supposed to be a TV series. It didn't work out because of some problems between CBS and Eddie Murphy Productions. But at the time, Clyde Phillips was over at CBS, and he was show running Houston Nights, which was a short-lived series that he created for them. That was a police drama, and they had assigned him to develop a TV series for teenagers, and he developed he developed Parker Lewis Can't Lose for CBS.
Mhm.
And after he saw and it was around the same time that they passed on What's Alan Watching. And so he was like, wow, we could really do something, unique with this. CBS passed on it. The rights returned back to him. And this was all also around the same time that 3 O'Clock High came out, the movie with Casey Siemaszko. Great film, cinematically, just a real, I would say, revolutionary in its use of the camera as a character in the movie to tell the tale in a way where it's really in your face, and not, a lot of times people are trying to tell the story with the camera, so you don't really feel like the camera's there, but you're seeing a beautiful frame.
Sure.
This was like you wanted to. He was forcing the camera down your throat in 3 O'Clock High. It was amazing, and that's where they got the camera style for Parker Lewis. But flash forward those years later, Clyde Phillips had partnered up with Lon Diamond, and they came together for Parker Lewis once they got the rights back. And when Fox opened up their platform, at that time, to a full slate of shows, they were able to pitch that show over there, and Fox picked it up right away, because that was after. See, you have to realize Parker Lewis was developed before Ferris Bueller came out. CBS passed on
Gotcha.
it. Rights reverted back to Clyde Phillips and Lon Diamond, and then went and then suddenly that movie comes out. It's a huge hit, and they take that series over to Fox, and they're like, no brainer. And we had to compete against the Ferris Bueller TV series that came out the same year we did, and beat them. They did their 13 episodes and were canceled, and we were picked up for the remainder of the season. So that was a big deal for us. But it was never based on Ferris Bueller. It gets a lot of not a lot of flack, but people seem to think that it was a spin-off or a spoof or taken from, but it was actually created at least a year and a half, 2 years before Ferris Bueller came out.
Okay. One of the things I noticed about the show, though, is that it's, for even its brevity, it's definitely left its mark on pop culture, and people are always referencing Parker Lewis. And matter of fact, my oldest son's name is Parker, and everybody would always ask me, "Oh, did you name him after Parker Lewis?"
Oh,
No. Like, no, actually, no, I hadn't thought about that. I just thought the name Parker was really cool.
Yeah.
But I would get asked
you know
that all
what?
the time.
You were subliminally influenced.
It was probably, yeah. Honestly,
I can tell you one thing: that kid cannot lose. That's for sure.
That's right. But when you meet people at like Comic-Cons or out in the public, and I'm sure that many people refer to you or talk to you about Parker Lewis and that show and all that, does it endear you to that IP more, knowing that it resonated with people so much?
Well, yes, of course. It's one of those shows. I mean, here in the U.S., like I said, it hasn't had the kind of runtime that I think it deserved over the years. But in other countries, it certainly did. And in France, it was a huge runaway success over there, and in other countries in Europe too. But France was really just a phenomenon. They literally did not take it off the air for more than a year or two, all the way up until like 2017 or so.
Oh, wow.
somewhere around. I mean, it would just run in cycles. It would go off the air for a year and a half or so, then somebody else would throw it on, because it was just so multiple generations of French grew up with Parker Lewis playing in their living rooms. and going over there is definitely a trip. There's far more recognition for that particular project over there than there is in the U.S. That's for sure.
Hmm,
That's
nice.
cool.
So
Yeah, I was just gonna follow up, just say that it's I mean, I always enjoyed it. I watched a couple episodes on there's some full episodes on YouTube right now. I was
Oh, that's
looking up some
surprising.
others.
Surprised they're not pulled yet.
Yeah, me too. That's why I was watching on YouTube. I was surprised that they hadn't been pulled yet, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll watch them while they're here. Uh, but I watched the pilot episode again this afternoon, and I laughed the entire time, especially uh, with the timing of the videotape, and you guys synchronizing your watches and putting in the videotape to show in the principal's office at the right time, with
Oh yeah.
just happening to have the right the same shirt on, everything. I don't know, it just really amused me. And all these
Yeah.
little things that always seem to happen in Parker's life, where he's able to maneuver things so that it's like he can't lose. But yeah, it always just really amused me. And so I always did enjoy that. So yeah, probably subliminally there's a reason why my son's name is Parker. But yeah, I've always just thought the name was cool.
And now, a word from our show sponsor, Level Up Sabers. Their link can be found in the show notes.
Welcome back to the FSF PopCast.
So, Corin, we love ourselves a good story, and you like to tell good stories. And
Hey.
Tim is quickly becoming a Stargate fan.
Okay.
Tis true.
So, were you a fan of Stargate before you were on the show? And do you have any fun stories or scenes of things that happened on set that were enjoyable and kind of funny?
I was a fan of the feature film Stargate.
Okay.
A really big fan. Probably one of only 15 people who saw it in America. Oddly enough, it flopped in the U.S., which is strange because I thought it was just brilliant when I went and saw it. But I was into that kind of revisionist history type stuff and alien conspiracy theories and everything. I was already into that kind of stuff at that young age like that. So it was right up my alley. And then when it came on as a series, some number of years later, it was on Showtime, I believe, and I didn't have Showtime, so I never saw this show. But what I did see was the billboards and the bus advertisements and the posters on I mean, it was just the marketing for it was tremendous. I was like, man, that show must be like huge. And I was a fan of the movie, so I was like, yeah, it's got to be a great show. When I had the opportunity to go on to the show and play the role of Jonas Quinn, I hadn't seen much of what the series was about, so I was kind of walking blind into it, season 5, hoping for the best, really. So fortunately, the season 5 episode I was introduced into worked out well. They all seemed to like me, and we got along, and it was a good working situation. And they brought the character back on to replace Daniel Jackson when Michael Shanks decided to leave the show for a time. But it wasn't until I got on the show then I asked the producer. I was like, I really need to, as the character, I need to understand what this whole universe is, what this whole world is. I mean, they actually had these booklets that would explain a lot of that stuff to you for the actors and everything.
Were they like literally labeled? Like, did they label the planet and be like, "Oh, this planet does this"? Or
yeah, it was similar to that. There was like kind of little educational booklets to kind of fill you in if you're like, what the, But anyway, so I ended up going back and starting with first episode, season 1, and ended up watching all 5 seasons of the show within like a week and a half. I mean, it was all I could do was just put that next episode in, put it in. I was just like, what? I'm on this show. This is crazy, and that was really exciting. Again, my father being a production designer, I'm always very keen on production design and what's going on around me artistically on the set in different departments, and the production design on that show was absolutely out of this world. It was next level. It was the biggest feature film production out there level production design. And so working on those sets was extremely fun. It was very easy to believe in the world. They actually used the green screen and all the painting of the special effects. They used it very sparsely. I think that they picked their battles wisely. They could have, there's so much more that they built that they could have just done partial sets for and painted the rest in and that they took the time out to actually build entire sets. It was great. The work schedule on it was pretty loose, but as far as like stories from it, I'd say that for me, one of the coolest experiences when we had it was season 7. What episode was it? Redemption, I think. Redemption 1 or 2. We're on a spaceship. It's sunk down in the bottom of the ocean. It starts flooding, and I have to swim. I gotta swim through a section of this completely submerged spaceship and ring out into a safe part of the spaceship where it's not flooded yet. And they built this entire section of the spaceship in this giant wave pool where they build models of ships and they test to test how they fare under storm conditions. And they had gigantic hydraulics that they put in the pool that could raise and lower. I don't know if these were already in the pool or they somehow put them in the pool. I don't have a clue, but these hydraulic lifts are big enough to lift a boat. They're huge. And they built the entire set on these hydraulic lifts, a big section of the spaceship. So it was missing its fourth wall. So they if you're watching it, you never look back the other way from the actors. You're always looking one direction on them, pretty much this way or that way, but you're never looking the other way. And if you are looking the other way, it's looking from over here, raking the side of that wall before you see that there's nothing there, because for safety reasons, where the roof ended, you needed really quick access to get out of there if something were to go wrong, or if you needed breath, or if you panicked. And then they had some divers in there that were kind of off camera, keep an eye on things. But the so the way that it looks on camera, it looks like the spaceship is rapidly filling up with water, but in reality, this entire set is lowering down at an angle into this huge pool. And the water is just, going up as it's lowering down. So it creates the optical illusion that it's filling up. And then I ended up, oddly enough, my entire life, I was one of those kids who was always like up for the challenge of how many times can you swim back and forth across the pool and hold your breath.
Did you do it?
I was notoriously the one who was winning those all the time. And I kind of would have this, get that technique of, I think there was, if I remember correctly, it was a movie that was, I forget the name of it, but it was a movie that my mom took me and my sister to see when we were kids. That was about this French dude who was the deepest free diver in the world at the time. And it was based on a true story. And this guy would hyperventilate himself and overcharge his body with, his blood system with oxygen, which would, and then take one last deep breath in order to be able to and then you have a lot more, oxygen in your system to be able to use. So I ended up, during the scene, I held my breath for 1 minute and 48 seconds.
Nice.
Which,
Oh, wow.
which was pretty long. And before I had to go and do the ring out scenario. And I could have held my breath a bit longer, I do believe, probably another 20, 30 seconds longer, without panicking too bad. But they ended up having to, they shot the whole thing. They had 2 cameras under there. They shoot this whole thing. And when they got in and they edited it all together, it was too long. They cut the sequence down. They're like, dude, this is 1 minute and 48 seconds. We can't sit here and watch this guy swimming around underwater for 1 minute and 48 seconds. We've got a show to, story to tell here. So instead of, normally they have to edit those scenes to make them longer, because people aren't holding their breath long enough or whatever to finish the action they're supposed to do underwater. But in this case, it was I held it too long. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty
Nice.
cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
I took lifeguard training, so at one point I could do like 2.5 minutes
Yeah,
underwater, and it was just, and there were certain times it was just brutal, but
yes,
it was definitely a lot of fun.
yeah.
Yeah, I would have drowned. But yeah. All right. So, Corin, as much as we love origin stories, we also like to be able to look ahead and see where the hero of our story is headed. So, in your case, what are some things on your plate that the audience can look forward to?
Well, man, well, I'll boil it down to there's a film called Half Dead Fred that just came out that a good friend of mine, Braun Thrawn, wrote and directed. It's a very small budget film, but it's out there on Tubi and all that. I want to be supportive of him, and I enjoyed my performance in it. It's kind of a film noir gumshoe detective mixed with paranormal activities type of thing. So
Okay.
it's interesting, but I'm very, very excited about some films coming out. The first one is called Joe Baby, and that's with Harvey Keitel, Ron Perlman are both in that.
Oh, neat.
Daisha, I always mangle her last name. Anyway, you guys will have to look it up. It's called Joe Baby. I have a nice little supporting role in it that the producer David Lipper brought me on to play. Good guy, friend of mine, and fortunately for me, I had the opportunity to do that role because with such a small role in comparison to the other ones, with limited amount of dialogue and time on screen, I created a dynamic enough character where suddenly it became kind of a bigger part of the movie, and
I see.
a more dynamic part of the movie than I think was expected. But so that said, not long after that, I went on and did a film called Dead Man's Hand, which I co-wrote. I wrote the initial draft for, based on the graphic novel No Rest for the Wicked that is published by
Okay.
Source Point Press. The Minor Brothers did it. It's a series of 3 books. The first of them is Dead Man's Hand, which this script is based on. And then
Okay.
Brian Skiba, the director, came in, did the director's polish on it and all of that. So joyfully, we share writing credit on that. And he brought it to life with a great cast. I do play a role in it, but it's cast with Stephen Dorff and Cole Hauser as the leads, along with
Oh, nice.
with Jack Kilmer is really the lead in it. Jack Kilmer, Val Kilmer's son.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Okay.
This is a great opportunity for him. A really great leading man role for him. I think that he delivered. I'm excited to see it. And that's a nice Western, really, really classic revenge kind of plot. It doesn't overthink itself, but it does have a really great through line to it. I think people are going to track with, and some really unexpected moments too, that I think people will be able to walk out of the theater with that kind of like, oh wow, that was that was a rougher ride than I thought it was going to be, but
Right.
in a good way. And and then David Lipper brought me back on for another film that we shot the beginning of this year, called Place of Bones, where I'm starring opposite Heather Graham and Tom Hopper.
Oh, cool.
And Cowboy Cerrone is in it as well. He's a famous MMA dude and actor, and I think he trains and does all kinds of stuff. Probably an influencer, as just so many become these days. I'll never be an influencer, I can promise you that. not a social one. But great cast. Audrey Cummings directed it. Wonderful director. The cinematographer who did most of why is his name slipping my mind right now? Good Lord. He shot most of Quentin Tarantino's films.
Okay.
A lot of them, and fantastic cinematographer. Him mixed with Audrey Cummings directing, and a really fantastic, phenomenally written script. This is going to be. It should be a game changer in my career. It should do some really great things for it. As much as say Stargate has done for me in the past, or Parker Lewis did for me, or the miniseries I Know My First Name is Steven did for me with the Emmy nomination, or the miniseries The Stand, the Stephen King miniseries playing Harold Lauder. That really opened my career up because it was the first time that I was given the opportunity to play a smarmy, weird, character, something that a character actor would normally play, not the guy who normally who is usually cast as the Letterman jacket, head of the class type of character. So after I did The Stand with Stephen King's The Stand, I got an opportunity to play a lot of different types of roles, darker characters, including in Ted Bundy, American Icon, playing Ted Bundy,
Right.
and in Chicago Massacre, playing Richard Speck. Neither of them are should be looked up to as individuals, but as an actor, it's challenging to bring those personalities to life. But I would never have had the chance to do either of those roles or many other darker characters that I did, probably including the character on Supernatural, had I not done The Stand earlier on.
Very cool. All right, Corin, we're at a spot in our show where we like to wrap things up with a silly question.
All righty.
So not that any of our other questions haven't been silly, but this is the silliest one, and you can answer it as serious or as silly as you see fit.
Perfect.
So now I've asked this question of a few other guests, and I have loved the responses that we've got, because it's kind of a per your appetite type thing, and how you ingest this form of entertainment. So I'm curious of your answer. If you had to pick a song to be your entrance theme music, if you were in the WWE or the UFC, what would your song be?
Oh, that's easy. That's very, very, very easy. Very easy. I don't know if that was Superman or not, but it would definitely be the theme to Superman.
The visual sold it more than anything. So
Thank you.
I lost it after the first and I saw the hands coming out. I knew what was coming. So, but yeah, that's awesome.
That was really good.
Come back for more, my friends. I can do the elevator later on.
He'll be here all week. Tip the waitress.
Well, Corin, thank you so much for being on our show today.
You bet. If you want to find out any more of my antics, you can find me on the letter I, the letter M, and my name, Corin Nemec. I'm Corin Nemec on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Rumble. I don't do anything on Rumble anyway except watch stuff. But on YouTube, I have Corin Nemec TV. There's some stuff there, some content of mine that I've developed. There's Blackwater Blues as well, which is I really meant to talk about. I can't believe I didn't, but that's an independently produced TV pilot that I created with Jason London, that I wrote, and Steve Wise directed it. It's been getting tons of wins at film festivals in the short film category, as well as in the independently financed TV pilot category. So Blackwater Blues you can find on my YouTube as well. And check that out. It's great. It's well worth the watch. Got some wonderful performances in it. So you can find me in all those. Facebook, I think it's I Am Corin Nemec on that too. And watch out for the fake me's. There's some fake me's out there. They're not me. Fake.
Stupid, dumb, stupid fake use.
Yeah,
Well-
now that I don't have a blue check on Twitter anymore, you won't even know who the real me is. Because sometimes I don't know who the real me is because I keep playing all these different characters. I get lost myself. I try to log into Twitter. I don't know which Corin Nemec I should log into.
Love it.
Well, thanks, Corin. We will make sure that we put those links in our show notes so that our listeners can go check them out.
Sweet.
All right, guys, I want to remind you that subscribing is the single most important thing you can do to help our show continue to grow and get more amazing guests like the man who can fly like Superman, Corin Nemec here, and have other funny moments for you to be able to listen to. So please subscribe. It helps out well more than we can ever really tell you. And go check out Corin's work. He's got some cool stuff coming up, and you guys aren't going to want to miss that. And we'll make sure that you click those links down in the show notes below. But if for whatever reason you are not happy with the content of our show today, please feel free to lodge a complaint with the head of our complaint department. That, of course, is Parker Lewis. Look, Parker isn't going to handle the complaints personally. That's what he has Mikey and Jerry for. And
That's right.
let's be honest, that's what Mikey has Jerry for. After all, Jerry was just a freshman. So submit your complaint forms in triplicate because they might get lost in transfer from Parker to Mikey to Jerry. And if somehow they get to Principal Mouse or Mussolini, just know that she will do whatever she can to bring each and every one of us down. And Parker will always be in the clear because, after all, he can't lose. So be kind and know that podcasting is an art form. We're just bad artists.
Love it. Love it.
Well, thanks again, Corin.
Hey,
Thanks,
thank
Corin.
you guys.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up for the FSF PopCast. Goodbye.
Ciao.
On behalf of the rest of the hosts of the FSF PopCast, we want to thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, please contact us by means of Twitter or Instagram using the handle @FSF PopCast, or go to www.fsfpopcast.com and click on the Contact Me link. Thanks again, and hope you enjoyed the episode.
Copyright 2023 FSF PopCast.
Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF PopCast. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpopcast.com. Original music by Jordan Michaels.